So, welcome to Shop Talks. Good afternoon, everybody. Shop Talks are brought to you by the InKitchen.com, which is where I'm from. We have a media company. It's free information online if you go to InKitchen.com. Also sponsored by the show here, Impressions, Haynes, big sponsor, and Hirsch Solutions. And I'm pretty lucky to have here with us Lon, Stan, and Dennis. They're going to introduce themselves a little bit more, and we're going to talk about what's involved in basically a small, medium, or large shop, so you might know what you're getting into.
All right, I guess I'm first. I'm Stan Banks. I have a YouTube channel called T-Shirt Side Hustle. I help people start from home. My thing is to try to get people into the industry and then get them guided on which way they want to go so that they can go on and learn and then figure out which direction they want to go and how they want to grow their business.
Hey everyone, my name is Dennis. I run a screen printing shop out of Brooklyn, New York. Started about 12 years ago. I had no background in screen printing, art direction. I went to business school at NYU, worked on Wall Street for a couple years, decided I wanted to work with my hands, started screen printing, and I'm on this journey here. 12 years. It's been quite a wild ride. I have one auto. We're about 1,000 square feet, and we're busy all the time.
I'm Lon Winters with Graphic Elephants. I've been doing this not quite as long as Rick, just shy, I think.
For me, it's since dinosaurs ruled the earth, so I don't know.
Just when they went extinct, I believe is when I got started. I've run factories as large as 100,000 square feet with 6 automatics, 100 employees, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Wouldn't really recommend it, but that's where some of my experiences come from.
No, and from my experience, I printed in my basement for a long time, printed thousands of shirts with no press and hung them on clotheslines. Had a small shop, and I have a pretty big shop now, which used to be bigger, and partner up with even bigger shops. So I kind of run the gamut here. So we'll start here with Stan, I think, about what's involved in getting a very small operation going.
So in order to get a small operation going, you're just going to figure out what your end product is, what I tell people. What kind of printing are you looking for? Is it screen printing? Is it sublimation? And which direction it is that you want to go. Establishing a budget. How much money do you have to start with? Once you figure those things out, you can kind of like figure out which method is going to be best for you and most cost effective for what you're trying to do. So for a screen print shop, starting from something that's small, like I did back in, so similar to what you did, is printing on a DIY starter kit and then starting to understand color separation and different things like that. And then maybe going into like a 4-station, 6-color press is kind of like, that's telling me that you're serious about getting into it. And from there, you know, you can kind of graduate into autos and different things like that. But just figuring out what the end product is going to be, who you're selling it to, and then how fast you need to scale up and what the output is going to be.
So actually yesterday, I don't know if you want to share it again, but there were the magic words that you could start even with no budget, basically, right?
Yeah, definitely. I started with no money whatsoever, and that just was off of contract printing. So
What was that magic term again?
Contract printing. So walking into some print shops, letting them know that you're in the business and asking them for contract printing, it kind of unlocks you to a different price scale than what someone normally get retail. So something that would be, let's say, a 1-color print at a shop that may be $350, you tell them you're a contract printer, you may be able to get that for $1.50, $1, $1.25, depending on the quantity. But that basically tells them that you're going to alleviate all the headaches. The things that come in where you're going to deal with the customer, you're going to bring them print-ready artwork, everything's going to be kind of laid out, mapped out, so they don't have to do any of the stuff that you're doing on the back end. Dealing with customers for some people is a headache. Not knowing what people want, how many, what colors, all of the customer service, you're taking that out, and you're going to drop off your shirts or have the company order them depending on, but usually drop off your shirts. Everything's going to be good to go. You're going to pick them up, and you're kind of used, like if he has an auto machine, I'm helping him keep his machine running. You know, so that's his thing. He always wants to keep it running and running and running, and he'll slide my jobs in whenever he has some downtime in his own customer base. Usually if you have shops that are running with one printer or a small shop, maybe one or two, a family operation, they don't have time in production to focus on getting customers and different things like that. A lot of these shops that are small just run off of word of mouth. So you're one of those sales reps of a sort, but you have your own business. So contract print is a way that you can walk in. You can do that with embroidery as well. I still do it with my embroidery. Contract it out, you mark it up, and you deliver it to your customer.
I think the other thing you mentioned yesterday is good to know. Is like, I think I might have said, what do you do if you have a couple $100? What do you do? And you were saying transfers are another option, or vinyl cutters.
Yep. So transfers is a great option for bulk work. I still believe anybody getting into the industry with no knowledge, no idea what they want to do, should start with a vinyl cutter, unless you have a few $1,000 and say, I want to be a screen print shop. That's the difference. But starting with the heat press and a vinyl cutter, because that knowledge that you gain from using the vinyl cutter is translatable in the color separation when you get into screen printing. Things that you can't cut on the vinyl cutter, you know that it turns into DTG or one of these full color formats. And then once you have that idea, you're going to grow. And I don't know, but any screen print shop you walk into is going to have a heat press. So you investing in that heat press is going to last you, as long as it doesn't break, it's going to last you into no matter how big you grow your business, whether that's putting on numbers because you're working with schools, or some companies finish their products with heat press and different things like that.
All right. So Dennis, what's involved? So I want a medium-sized shop or a small shop. I just buy a press and that's it, right? That's the only cost? I just move it in and start printing?
Screen printing is actually very difficult. So I think Stan actually touched on a lot of good points. So even as a shop my size, I'm thinking about taking a step back and contracting my stuff out to another shop because of how difficult it is to run a shop sometimes between managing employees, managing clients, managing new business. There's a lot going on. So sometimes I do think about taking a step back and, hey, maybe I will start contracting stuff out to other printers who can focus on running their shop. Because I live in New York, right? Rent's expensive, staff is expensive. Those are my two fixed costs I can never take away. In terms of starting a business, transfers are great. I'm Asian. My parents came to America. They were immigrants. We had no money. They don't speak a lick of English. So I didn't grow with money at all.
Sometimes I feel that way too.
So we had no money, and I started this business literally with $200, So I started with the one color, one station. I worked in 2 garages and 2 basements before I moved into my shop now. And now I run an auto. But I always tell people, do what you do to get to the next step. So you start with the one color, one station, move it up to a 4 color, one station. That's how I did it. I can't tell you how you're going to do it, but that's how I did it. Some people, they take a loan for $250,000 and they buy, like an oval or something. But I'd say take gradual steps. I think that's a safe
You want to take us through the steps a little bit. So,
Yeah.
so you had the one color, one station. Was that air dried ink, or how were you drying the ink?
So I was drying with a heat gun. And I was lucky at the time because
Did you use ink or toilet bowl cleaner? You laugh, you could do it.
you could do it. I use plastisol ink, luckily. But, luckily for me, a lot of my clients were close friends. A lot of people say, how do you get a new business? Where do you start? Start with people you know and start with something that you're passionate about, So I started with friends. So if those shirts aren't 100% dry, I shouldn't be telling you this. They're not going to come and rip your head off, Not a lot of the customers we have now, we put out great product. But when you're starting off, if your friend's not going to be upset if your shirt's a little vintage or, that's the way we like to put it. But
So where'd you go from there? So you had, one color, one station.
One color, one
what
station.
What was the next step?
went to a 4 color, one station so I could do more colors. Eventually, I had to get a dryer. I started with the small Vastex
So
D1000.
just to let people know, because a lot of people are maybe here for the first time.
Right.
What kind of investment is that? Like, what's the range of a price for a small press and for a small dryer?
Right. So for like a 1 color, one station, you could, if you get a cheap eBay one, you'll probably spend like $100, $200. If you get a nice one, it'll be like $300, $400. A 4 color, one station, you start paying a little more for it, but you can get more out of it too. You can start charging customers more for it as well. Eventually, as Stan said, I moved up to a 6 color, 4 station. That's like a actual press. That's when I thought I made it, but as time goes on, you start thinking, how am I going to expand this business? That's one of the most difficult things is how are you going to expand the business, make it bigger than what it is? And always have the end in mind, where do you see yourself in 5-10 years? Do you want a shop with 15 autos? Or do you want a shop with just 1 auto? And that's kind of the decision you need to make, Sometimes you won't know it either, but
They actually
Yeah.
say that if you plan like that, it makes life a lot easier. So if you know where you're headed,
Right.
each of those intermediary
Mhm.
decisions is easier.
Absolutely.
So if you know you're going to keep doing this for a long time, you maybe buy a little better transfer press, like you mentioned, because you're going to be using that in the future.
Right.
You're going to use good screens if you want to be the biggest in your area or something like that. So I know a really big step is to get an auto. So take us through a little bit through your thinking for that and what was involved and what kind of money.
So I've worked in small shops and big shops. So after I left Wall Street, I knew I wanted to do screen printing. I just didn't know how I was going to get the money for it. So I went around and worked a lot of different shops to get different perspective, see how the shops are ran. Because if you only work in one shop or if you only watch one set of YouTube videos, your knowledge is only from that one perspective. So get to know as many people as you can. And from there, I kind of figured a shop that has 3 autos does this much volume in business, what you need to do. So I pay for my auto all in cash, actually. So I couldn't, I'm like I said, I didn't come from money. Taking a loan out was out of the question. That's not something that I grew up on. So I pay for that all in cash.
And what's the range that people will pay for
an auto?
Yeah. And was it used or new? The first
It was
one?
new. It was a new rock. So I love my auto. That's probably, like I said, I feel like I made it now because that's my big step. But it's a small rock. It's a 6 color, but it does great for us. It does everything we need. But eventually, maybe we'll add another one, and maybe 3 at some point.
So what else is involved in that shop? Because I think I said that as a joke before. All right, so you just get the press and you put it in. That's it. That's the only cost.
Definitely make lots of friends with other shops so you can come visit them. So I definitely implore people, meet the person next to you. Say, hey, where are you from? Can I come visit you? So this is more than just, we're just talking. This is a networking event. Like, you should always get to know people. Like,
and the screens magically happen, right? You don't need a screen room or anything like that. Ink room, any of those investments happen. What are the other investments that you need to make?
So you definitely need, a dark room, screens, exposure units, chemicals. These are consumables. When you're starting off small, you're obviously going to not buy the gallons or the 5 gallons of ink. Offer people less ink options. A lot of times, like, we offer all our customers Pantone colors just because we want to match. For those of you who don't know what Pantone colors are, you want to custom match a color to a branding or whatever it is. But, I don't know if anyone knows, there's an ink shortage at the moment. So we're only offering white ink and black ink. And if you see any ink sales, pick up some ink,
All right, Lon. So once you take it past the stage that Dennis is at, what does Dennis have to look forward to, or what's the pain if you try to get bigger than where he is? I know you've done that.
I too have gone through the humble beginnings and started in the basement kind of thing and worked our way through the first automatic, and now in getting to the 6 automatic stage, we've actually pulled back to 3 machines at this point for a lot of reasons that I'll go into as we kind of talk about it. But it's and Rick's been through this as well. It becomes this passion or this excitement to get bigger and sometimes not necessarily better. We went from 2 automatics to 6 automatics over a period of 5 years, and our bottom line was exactly the same, and I'm talking within dollars. So we were running 24 hours, 7 days a week, 100 personnel. I can tell you it's a young person's sport. Probably the most miserable 5 years of my life. I learned a ton. Now, I don't think I'd be as good at what we do as we are had I not had that experience. However, I'm not sure I'd wish it on anybody. There is a sweet spot in our business, and I believe it has everything to do with, and I've learned this through some mentoring on just business side. There's like a sweet spot of profitability in the $1 million range. There's a sweet spot in the $3 million range. There's a sweet spot at the $5 million range, and then you got to get to 10 before there's another sweet spot. So knowing that as you it doesn't even really matter if it's pure contract or it's full package, those ranges kind of work, and you find out that in the single automatic area, you can be in $1 million range. It's going to take you at least a couple automatics to hit that 3 million. To reach 5, you may need 4 to 6 automatics. And when you start in with all that, with that many personnel, that much overhead, it starts to eat you up. Now, I only share this because I figure you came here to try to learn something. I'd love to tell you that we went from 0 to $10 million and everything was gravy. We did the 0 to 1 to 3 to 5, and we're back down in the 2 range, trying to work ourselves back up to 3. Again, for a lot of reasons, we had some. Because it requires money, I needed a partner. We brought I don't know if anybody else has partners, but partners can be a bad marriage if you've ever had a bad marriage.
Yes.
We ended up having a bad
I have.
marriage. He had a bunch of retail resort stores that, long story short, a divorce there. Wife took all the profitable stores. He was left with about nothing. Our operation was actually profitable until the Titanic took the life raft down. However, we were able to kind of pull out of that and rebuild in what, it's been 15 years ago. What we saw was kind of the good of what we did, and we took the best people, the best equipment, the best materials, and all of the things that we had learned over that period of 10 years and applied them at a more focused approach rather than being kind of spread all over. We were doing tons of big brand contract as well as trying to run full package, which is basically you're selling the printed or the decorated garment at the end. We diversified way too fast. We took on embroidery, we took on digital, we took on transfer, we took on a lot of different things too quickly. So all that to basically say, be careful what you wish for. Don't grow too fast, don't grow too big. And keep your arms wrapped around it as you're kind of making those expansions.
All right. Questions, maybe? Any other comments? You guys?
So I want to add to what he said about, like, once you start to grow your shop, you figure out that when you start to hire employees, and that's where I'm at right now, just trying to figure out who to hire and what to hire, it becomes more like you're not running the shop, you're becoming a people manager. And if that's not you, it's perfectly fine staying small if that's where you feel like your sweet spot is. Me personally, I like to keep my free time. And I started out screen printing on a 6.4 after I got out of my basement, and I went backwards to heat transfer just because it allowed me the freedom of the things of working in the screen room, of burning screens, of washing out, all of the stuff that I didn't want to do. I wouldn't mind printing and pulling a squeegee, but after a while, I stopped reclaiming screens and buying new ones like 3-4 times a week. I have 10 screens showing up, and then we look around the shop, and some people here know, she remembers, you couldn't walk through the store because we just kept buying screens because we couldn't find somebody consistently to reclaim and do these things. So it's like, it becomes frustrating at times. Like, we could grow this thing so big if we could just find the right people. And so we ended up, literally, it was like maybe an aisle, like half the size of this, where we could walk through, because it was me printing, my other person out selling. We're just moving product and product, and I'm shipping orders out. That was the time I was doing some fulfillment and things like that, but you couldn't walk through the shop. So it was like, let me figure this thing out. I went back, I was like, oh man, I love heat transfers. I can stock these, I can press them up as I need them. And the demographic, as far as listening to what your customers want, I think that's what he was kind of saying in a way, is like, what is it that you're selling? What is your product that's making you money? It's sometimes we try to do everything for people. Oh, we small businesses, oh man, I need mugs. Oh, I can do that. I'll go buy the machine. But you don't realize that the time it takes you to learn and put into it, and it's not really actually profitable for you in the beginning. I tell people to try everything, but at the end of the day, you got to look at the numbers. You got to analyze the time that you're spending, and then you got to figure out where it is that you want to be and if it's actually worth it and making you money.
I think everything these guys said is 100%. Sometimes if you diversify too much, you split your time and you split your money. Like, one thing that a lot of us did, most screen printers did during the pandemics, was we started doing this, like, Here for Good kind of campaign where, you partner with restaurants or any other place that isn't really doing business and be like, we'll sell a shirt for you and we'll take 50% of the profits. Man, during that time, I think I lost business because I was too busy doing that and focusing on our regular customers. Because actually during the pandemic, we were actually doing pretty well.
Really, we did it. Total
Yeah.
failure.
Was it? Okay, I'm glad someone else admitted to. Because for us, we lost money because we were too focusing on fulfillment, printing these individual shirts, doing things that we normally didn't do. You know, we went and we had to get one of those websites like Inksoft, and that was like $400 a month. You know, it just wasn't really worth it for us. So I think starting small, growing small is a big thing. When you grow too fast, like Lon said, a lot of big things can happen. A lot of bad things can happen. That's why sometimes you have to reevaluate. I look back at my status. I'm like, do I want to go back to contracting from another printer maybe, embroidery, etc.?
Yep. Stan said, I think, a real important thing. You have to value your own time. You know, I think that of anything I see in the show, it's people that don't value their time. So, you know, they're driving across town on their motorcycle to pick up a box of shirts, and they, you know, save $12, and they think this is a good idea. That's a good idea, I guess, if you like riding motorcycles. But if you want to have a business, a terrible idea. So, you know, and it comes from not valuing your own time and not maybe looking at what you're going to do with your time. You know, maybe you should be selling, not driving shirts around on a motorcycle.
Something I definitely want to bring up too is like the bigger your shop is during pandemic. I have friends who own shops who are burning like $11,000 a day because they weren't doing well. So if you're working from home and you're at a basement, like, so you don't work today or tomorrow, like, you know, no one's going to come hound you for rent. And for me, I have a giant dark room. I have an auto, all that stuff, you know, it needs to be fed constantly to make that money. But if I'm at home with just a heat press, hey, I can still heat press 100 shirts. I need, you know, a 10 foot by 10 foot area, and I'm pretty golden, you know?
So, I mean, you're saying you might want to contract. I kind of say I hear that a lot. And pretty soon, you know, everybody can't contract stuff out. Somebody has to do it. So it's not the worst idea in the world. And I do see some openings now for like larger or medium-sized shops. What are some of the advantages? What are things that you could do that a small shop could not do? You know, in terms of full packages, maybe explain what a full package is, et cetera.
Sure, we've adopted that term over the last few years. Full package to us basically means we start the design concept, do the sampling, we do the production when we get it, we do the folding, bagging, fulfillment, drop shipping, and even individual shipping. So we call it a full package. Now, some folks might argue that the screen print process or the decoration is a commodity and you have to stay within a certain value proposition within that commodity pricing of your competitors. But if I can convolute it and turn it into a full package, I can get paid on the art, I can get paid on the sampling, I can get paid on the setup, I can get paid on the fulfillment, I can get paid on this full package and turn my 60-cent screen print into a $10 item. So ideally that's kind of the full package approach. Now when they mention contracting it out, it's quite simply we want to play the broker role, and we buy the garments and we take care of the rest of the process, and we sub out the rest of the package. So we don't get the margin on the garment, but we still get the packaging and we get the separation, we get the setup, we get the printing, and we can add a quarter and a quarter and a quarter for all those items. So instead of a $60 print, we got $1.90. So there is some value in being a contractor. And quite honestly, though we all came from humble beginnings here, it's a lot easier to start a fully automated operation today than it was 10 or 20 years ago with the automation in pre-press, with screen making, the automation in setups. You can put together $250,000 like you mentioned. You can put together a fairly practical subcontracting type of operation that you don't have to learn the entire process. There are services for art and separations. There's automation in screen making and reclaim, and then there's automation in setup. You don't have to be the craftsman that maybe we had to become early on. And I say that with tongue in cheek to some degree because I resent it a little bit as well. But you can be a pretty darn good printer pretty quick these days without putting in the 10, 15, 20 years of practice.
No, and there's a lot of problem with having a lot of employees and the kind of work you need. But if you have the right customer, I mean, for a while, for example, your first company, you had the right customer that was going to supply you with work all the time, right? So that's not as bad of a situation. If you're hunting day to day for customers and you have 4 automatics, that's a different story.
For sure, and we've got good friends that are pure contractors. And they would have a flat differing view than I do on the full package. They would say we are a pure contractor, although they do the other fulfillment services, but they refuse to buy the garment. I don't want to tie up my money. I'm going to make my customer tie up their money. We do services, we get paid for services, and quite successful. So there is some upside to doing contract, and you got to have it all. I always say you got to have your shit together. It's all got to be dialed in so that you can be very productive in each of those parts, for sure.
All right, I'm going to open. Any more comments or open it up for questions? All right, we're going to open it up for questions. Who has questions for any of these distinguished gentlemen?
We talked them all out of getting into the business.
Wow.
Or getting out.
No, everyone's afraid to go first. I know this. Who's got a question? Want to know anything about what you're getting into if you want to get into this business? Oh, in the spirit of Misprint Monday, what's the worst decision?
I got a good story. So I got a good story where I formed out a job to a company that contract printed DTG work. I designed this beautiful design for a memorial shirt. And in my area, I do like a lot of, at this time I was doing a lot of Nina papers and putting pictures on shirts. This was for a college memorial. I actually contracted the job out, and it didn't arrive in time. It was a beautiful design. It was made specific for DTG. So then I had to go out and I had to get all of this Nina paper and find all this stuff to complete these shirts in order to have it be on time. So it wasn't like my job. They showed up. I needed it for like a Saturday, and I'm in contact all the time. And basically Thursday comes, the company was like, well, we shipped them today. I didn't overnight them, so I don't know what to tell you. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't know what to tell me? I've been talking to you guys for like the last week, and it became one of those things. So I suggest people like make sure if you're contracting out, you build the relationship, you go through the process. Don't let it be the first time you're ordering on a specific customer's job, especially if it's time oriented. But the shirt showed up like that next Monday or Tuesday, and they looked great. And I was just like, man, if I could have delivered these. Now the customer didn't know, and that goes to something we talked about yesterday. The customer doesn't care as long as they get the thing that they want on the shirt. They don't know or don't care if it's a Nina paper or if it's DTG. Most of the retail customers don't understand or don't know unless they've done a little bit of research or somebody's told them, I want X, Y, and Z. And you can kind of coach them. So that was like a $700 loss on that job that I had to do twice pretty much. So that I didn't misprint it, but that was a huge thing.
No, and I would say based on that, I mean, that's why I think some of us do get bigger shops that you can't stand. I can't stand to not do stuff on time. Yeah. So, or not have it right. So I initially contracted work out. I did hand printing, then was basically the only customer for someone with 2 automatics. But then I couldn't stand like not having the control myself in terms of the timing or the quality or the developments I wanted to try. So that's why I took the plunge and borrowed the money, et cetera. So that's
definitely a long conversation, but yeah, that's the problem with contract. Even on my end, sometimes we contract our embroidery out, and you have no control of the process. That's why sometimes, most of the time, I say contract, but at the same time, we control the process. I know what's happening. I can dictate an employee to do something, whereas when it's contract, you send something off, you won't see until it gets back. Stitching could be the wrong color, inks could be the wrong color, it could be the wrong size, 100 things can go wrong. That's the big thing about that.
Unless you're a dependable contractor. There's some of those as well. Misprint Monday in the true spirit of Misprint Monday. 25 years ago or so, the Final Four was in Denver, and I believe Arkansas won the national championship that year. And we always remember that there's an S on the end of Arkansas, right? It's silent. We made sure that S was there, but we forgot the other one. 40,000 pieces missing the S that everybody pronounces. So we didn't eat that because it was approved by the license holder, which we're going to talk about shortly. However, we didn't get paid for 40,000 shirts and had to print 40,000 more. So being a contractor, even when it's not your fault, sometimes you end up in a rough spot as well. But ultimately it worked out for us, but what a horrible misprint Monday. Rick has to have one.
Well, we printed beer foam and unbeknownst to us, very small amounts of yellow and red in an ink are not stable. So it was tan when we printed it, and about 3 weeks later, it was pink. Pink beer foam is not real popular. Luckily, it was not all the shirts, but it was about 100,000 shirts. The formula was by, well, actually, it's so long ago I can say. It was Rutland, and they stood by it, actually, and their insurance paid my customer to accept the shirts that weren't acceptable or like to pay them for that, and I've been a loyal customer of theirs. So no matter, actually, Stan talked about this yesterday. So whether you're just in your, garage printing, or you got a small shop like Dennis or a big one like Lon's, really trustworthy suppliers that will stick with you are essential, and you got to be loyal to them if you're going to have them loyal. You can't go shopping for a penny and then expect them to stand by you. But it's real important that you have vendors that you can depend on. There's some of your going to be your save your life. Other questions? How do you get your employees to care, and how do you find employees? We'll maybe have a week-long shop talk on that one later. That is a very meaty question. But let's hear a little bit of advice here.
So for me, I'm struggling right now. And, when it comes to like just getting people to care, first off, you got to know what they care about, in my opinion. The pay is one thing. You want to pay them accordingly for the work that they're doing. But I've started to adopt the philosophy like, how can I help you get to where you want to go? And you got to realize that people are going to outgrow you. Sometimes you may find an employee that will last forever, more so probably in the big shops where they can grow with you and different things like that. But for me and the type of work that I do, where I'm working with a lot of small brands and using a heat press, so I can have anybody in the shop and heat pressing, and I can leave them on their own in about 30 minutes of good training, in my opinion. But ultimately, those people who've come back and worked with me over time, it became one of those things for me where it's like, well, what is your end goal? And I don't want you to stay with me forever, because I know you're going to, you got your own ambition. So they may come in wanting to start their own line. And now I want you to work with me for a year or 6 months if you find the right person for that. And it's like, at the end of this, here's what you'll have. I'll give you access to certain things. That's different than what they're going to be running at a large shop, though, where, off hours, I'll let them print. They have access to different things in the store. That's because I'm running a small operation with a specific customer as far as printing for brands and different things like that, where I'm able to do things on demand, and the stuff that I give them access to, they can actually use for what they're working on as well.
I think that's a great question that everyone asks themselves every day. But most importantly, I think hire for attitude and train for skills. So when I hire someone, I don't ask them, do you have any screen printing experience? I actually never hire people based on screen printing experience. If someone says, I've been printing for 10 years, that's a red flag for me. It means you have a lot of bad habits I need to break. But if someone's coming in and they're really happy and they're willing to do anything, those are the people I'm looking for most likely, because I can train anybody to print. But the attitude is one thing I cannot change, because you've been with that your whole life. But I think, like Mark Coudray, one thing he always recommends is people take a personality test. I think it's called like 27 personalities. There are some people who just are really into fulfilling other people's dreams and goals. I think those are the people you kind of want to look for, So
I've been lucky enough. I have two key people that have been with me for 25, maybe 28 years. Shout out to Jason, who's my plant manager, who is probably one of the best in the world. He doesn't have any bad habits because I taught him everything he knows. Now he might tell me that he's taught me a few things over the years too, and he has. And we've got a great illustrator and artist in Corey, who's been with us 25 years as well. And we've got a great team, and we can surround ourselves with other people to fill gaps. But I'm really lucky in that they're super loyal, and we've taken good care of them over the years. But we're having the same struggles you guys are right now with bringing bodies in, and I know it has everything to do with the pandemic and politics and everything else. But I am working harder in my own factory than I have in 15 years for sure. and just getting people to show up after lunch. We shared a story yesterday. We both had somebody not come back after lunch last week. So it's like it's common at every level, and I don't know that we have any solutions anytime soon. It's just if we can continue to survive.
Robots.
Maybe.
So I think one thing is to know that everyone's going through it. I think, and it's a little less lonely process to try to hire people when everyone is struggling with that. I think you have to be creative. I think that's what Stan and Dennis are saying. Yeah, we hire people. We schedule people for interviews and they don't show up. We have hired several people recently. They said they were giving notice, showing up in 2 weeks, and they don't show up. It's like I don't know, ghosting and dating has gone into ghosting and employment, and it's really ghosting is rudeness, I guess. Though really, you got to get creative. So for first time ever, I offer some bonuses. Like we have a very key employee, and we have a huge rush in our online stores. So she's going to get a bonus when she stays till January, rather than a raise. So because we'll be dead in the water if she leaves in December. So gone to. Never thought I would do this, but it's been kind of effective. To a technical school that's near us, they have a printing program, not screen printing, but they have some people and to spread a really wide net. And also, I've read some studies about like what makes a good teacher, what makes a good NFL quarterback, and part of it is nobody knows, and you have to go through a lot of employees. A lot of people you'll know really soon are not fit for the work. A lot of them will decide with their feet and they'll just leave, but you also have to get rid of people that suck. It's terrible, but you do. And the quicker, the better. A follow-up? You thought what?
Yeah, so when I hired my first employee, and fortunate enough for me, I hired her at the right time because I ended up in a hospital, but I hired her, and I instantly realized how valuable it was and how much time I wasted. So now it gave me a new perspective on it. But I was away traveling to do some stuff, and her birthday came up. And then she decided not to come. Her birthday was like Thursday or Friday. And I'm like, cool, I understand you can have your birthday off, and, you should be done by Tuesday. But I called on Monday, no answer. I called on Tuesday, what's going on? And she's like, well, I told you my birthday was this week. And I'm like, okay, your birthday's on Friday. Like, you took the whole week off, and I'm away. So I had to fly back because it's my business. It's my name on it. She's not going to care the way I care. So I had to buy a second plane ticket. I couldn't get the money back for the first one to come home early to deliver the stuff to the customer. And basically, she didn't care. And here it was, again, like I said, I get creative, and she wanted a clothing brand, and she wanted a new heat press. I was going to let her on her birthday, like when she came back, leave with the press that was there. I already had a new one there. And she missed out on that because she didn't care the way that I cared. But just imagine if you would have even told me, like, hey, I'm not going to come in all week, I'm going away or something, it was just like, well, I told you my birthday was this week. I'm not coming in at all at this point. So I had to leave a trip. So, you're not going to get people to care, so you got to figure out what they care about, in my opinion, and try to gear something towards that and be creative.
And you also have to, if you have a bunch of employees, you have to remember that you want to retain the good ones that he mentioned more. It's very easy to take them for granted, I think, and worry about who else you have to hire instead of worrying about keeping the people that are going to stay late, that are going to work extra, that are going to put some thought into making your business good. Retention is more important even than hiring. Dennis?
What kind of business are you running? Screen printing, embroidery, or screen printing? Here's the thing. Yeah, screen printing in general, it's labor intensive. It's not meant for everybody. It's hot, especially now we're on the East Coast. Humidity, it's probably like 120 out there, and not everyone can stand on their feet all day. So you got to find the right person, right attitude. And my biggest one is like when employees, I call it Fred Flintstone. At 5 o'clock, they just dinosaur, like out the door. Like sometimes they'll just leave everything still on. And I'm like, that's the thing. You just got to find people who just stay the extra 10, 15 minutes. They care about the business. You could tell very quickly if someone's meant for the business or not,
I got a question.
Retention is important. We've done some creative things like Rick was talking about with monthly or quarterly bonuses for those people that do the extra. And then we've had some luck filling in with part-time people. They seem to want to work more. Maybe they're not getting paid as much to stay home. other people that own other businesses that are down, or they're trying to rebuild their part of the, whether we've got a cabinet maker, we've got a retiree, we've got several part-timers that can't work full-time, but I can make 8 part-timers into 3 or 4 full-timers. So that's been a creative way to get some people that actually care. Now, you don't get them the full day, but at least you get a half day on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
No, and I bet a lot of people don't have to hear this, but I'll tell you, if you're casting your net to white guys only, you're a dumbass, because the world is a much bigger place, and since a lot of people discriminate, you're going to find your best employees. Maybe their English isn't that great, maybe they're not white guys, maybe a woman with kids that needs to change her hours. Those are going to be some of your best employees, because other people are overlooking those employees, and that is definitely a way you want to hire.
So I got a question for these guys. As I started to travel here on the East Coast, I find everything is like majorly price driven, volume driven. But then when I go to the West Coast, it's all about quality. And a lot of people ask or have questions, and like one of my biggest videos is what to charge. So how did you guys in your big shop running high volume? How did you guys settle on your price point and find your niche of customers?
I'll start. We've gotten really creative recently over the last few years by changing to that full package model that I was talking about, so we can provide a complete unit at a price point rather than, there is some truth to the market drives pricing on a particular one color on a white Gildan 2000. It's going to have a market price point, and I probably can't get more for it than somebody else can. So we try to stay out of that business unless it accompanies something special, and we kind of ended up in a specialty niche, and I know Rick does too, where we do stuff that other people don't want to do, so that gives us a place to throw a price out that isn't related to the market. It's related to this customer wants this thing that he knows we and 10 other people can do, so they're not going down the street and price shopping it. So it's kind of a loaded question that I can't really give you our one color pricing, because I'm only going to do it if it accompanies another job.
I think the age-old question too is like, how do I charge? What kind of pricing should I have? Here's what I tell you don't do. Don't go price shopping down the block to the other shop and be like, what are you guys charging? And then charge less than them, because those guys probably have no idea what they're doing either. There is a ton of price calculators out there. If no one knows where to find them, email me. I'll send you 5 of them, Most important thing really is your fixed costs. You're really charging for your time. People don't think of screen printing as a time management business, but that's really what it is. It's project management. The faster you get jobs up, the faster you get them out, that's how you make money. So when it says, how much should I charge? It depends where you live. I live in New York City. Everything's going to be way more expensive than if I lived in Texas or if I lived in Indiana. So I'm sure my pricing compared to Lon's is probably more expensive, and probably even compared to Rick's, So fixed costs, rent, staff, electricity, all these things play into essentially what we call your burn rate per hour, and that's kind of how we figure out our pricing. So in an hour, if you can print 100 white shirts, we divide that by your burn rate, and that's kind of how we get that.
I think Josh mentioned yesterday about there's price, quality, and how long it takes you at speed. You only get 2 out of 3 of those usually, and so you got to decide what you're going to offer. And I'll tell you, it's way better to do speed and quality than it is price. You're not going to get rich on price usually. You got to not be afraid. It's funny. I've been in a couple of larger situations where people were really talking about their pricing. Almost to a person, they were petrified to raise their prices, and almost to a person, if they were a good shop, they had no problem raising their prices in the end.
It's funny you say that, because I've looked at I call it the quality of life of printers, and him saying I wouldn't wish it on anybody. I've walked into shops with 13 autos, and the owner looked like he's losing his mind. And he's running, and one presses down, and he's panicking because he lost it, right? But then I've visited a bunch of shops on the West Coast, and you walk in and it's so cool, calm, and collected. But it's all because of the quality of work that they're putting out, and they're not, quantity based or driven by small margins. and it just looks a lot different. The atmosphere is different. They got time to talk to you. You know, it's just been like a world. It opened my eyes, and seeing this, and a lot of people here, if you walk around on the East Coast and you see stuff, it's like this is one way of doing it, and there's a whole other way, and it's trying to find that medium, and that's why I asked that question.
Well, we're in rural Colorado, which is different yet. But I can't say if you haven't gotten a letter from your ink company or your distributor saying your prices are going to go up, even if they can get it for you, don't be afraid to send that matter-of-fact letter to your customers. We started doing it. Our costs of labor have gone way up. All our costs of materials have gone way up. And nobody's got time to talk to you because they're all busy and understaffed. I sent an email out that said your prices are going up 25%. Okay. So I think for the most part, during this time where we're paying a whole lot more to get the product out there, it's a perfect opportunity to not have that fear of how am I going to raise my prices. Be matter of fact about it. Our materials and our labor's gone up, so we're going to raise our prices. And be aggressive. These ink companies sent you a 10% one last month, and they sent you 15% this month. So,
Other questions? Oh, that's a good one. Okay. All right. So the question is, he's built the company himself. He has 7 or 8 employees, but he still has a lot of customers that want to speak to him only.
I know that guy over there. I think you need a salesperson, essentially. You need someone to remove you from the business and say, if you need to talk to somebody, you talk to them. I think that's the most important thing. Because as a business owner, we do want to eventually stop working as much, you know? Like, I actually wound up in the hospital 2 months ago because I got shingles because I was working 20 hours a day for 3 weeks straight, nonstop. And apparently, you can kill yourself, but I did not know that. So I went to the hospital and said, you're not leaving. And I'm like, okay, cool. I guess I'm taking a mandatory vacation at this point, so, you know.
I wish I knew. I got the same problem. We struggle with it. One way is bring your wife in. that at least doubles your capacity anyway, or triples it, I guess, in my case.
Okay. All right. All right. So the comment is, as a consumer, she says why she wants to talk to the owner. Oh, the owner's better than the. Oh, needs a sweet talking sales force. That's what you got to look for, man. Ah! So the comment was that's why he doesn't want to talk to him. We will give him a better deal. That's. He says that's the reality. Well, I'm with you. I have really good employees that care about the company, and they try to keep me from talking to some people because I will give a better deal, and it's not always good for any of us. Did you have a question or a comment on that? Oh, the suggestion is if you want to talk to the owner, you got the owner's hours only. You also say you have to kind of pull back and realize that you're not the most important, and let some of your employees have a little freedom to do things their own way, because otherwise you will end up doing everything and you will end up in the hospital like Dennis.
Yeah, so what I'm going through right now is similar to what you're saying, but first you got to empower your employees to make this kind of decisions that they're looking for, and then you have to tell the person that's calling, like, okay, I'm going to speak to you this time, but listen, I'm going to solve this problem for you, but this person is able to handle this. You know, I had to have this conversation literally like 2 days ago. This person can make these decisions. You know, I'm like, Sierra can talk to you. What do you mean she can talk? She can handle. What's your problem? Whatever your problem is, she can handle it. You got to be really, really adamant about it. But you're going to have to kind of wean them off from talking to you. And now I'm not even around. I'm traveling. I'm going places. So they call me. They can't get an answer. I'm texting concierge. She'll take care of it. And whatever it is. So that person has to be empowered to make decisions. And it starts with her calling me and saying, well, this person wants this. I told them this. They said they want to talk to you. And when they call, okay, cool. I call them back. She said, what did she say? Okay, cool. That's what it is. It's not, I'm not going to change from her decision, and I'm going to stand by that. So that way it's kind of like weaning that person off of reaching back out to you and saying, I'm going to go over. That's what it is. I'm going over your head. I wasn't in the shop to make a decision. Well, I'm going to call Stan. Okay, cool. She's looking at her like, well, call him. He's going to tell you the same exact thing I told you. And when you do that, now it's like, all right, well, it's no even point in calling him, or they're not going to bother you. They're just going to have a problem, or they're going to deal with what that person said.
All right, other questions? Yeah. So, So I hope I boiled this down for the people that didn't hear it. Basically, the idea is to empower your employees so that they are confident, and then really importantly is to back them up later and not change the decision that they made. Did I get that right?
I mean, one thing I want to bring up is who here has actually talked to Jeff Bezos before? Nobody, right? It's because he has layers in his management, and that's kind of what you need too. And if you essentially give your employees power, they can make those decisions and, make yourself a big company. Look like a big company at least, because I run a small company, but we make it look big.
Other questions, comments? All right, how about a hand for Stan, Dennis, and Lon? And I want to thank our sponsors again, Impressions, Haynes, and Hirsch Solutions. We have a couple more talks about online stores and and hot market printing if you want to print for it won't be the Colorado Rockies, so we can talk about that. All right, thanks for coming.